It's actually taking who I am and the meanness of me and helping me understand some patterns and ways to respond more appropriately. Welcome to AI for Good. I'm Sam Wheatley, one of your hosts. My co-host is with me here today, Dylan Bowes. And it's really what feels like the first day of the new year, even though it's January 6th. It was sort of an extended holiday season this year. And so what's on our mind is probably what's on your mind is New Year's resolutions. And how does that even apply to AI if it does at all? So Dylan, you had a couple of thoughts about that.
Yeah, Sam, you were talking about how you had chosen a word for the year, the sort of like a theme that to pursue for the year, which was connectedness, and you can share a little bit about what that means. But I was just kind of curious to explore maybe the ways that you have used AI in planning your New Year's resolution or this word, this theme, and sort of some different ways that we and our listeners can use AI to make that resolution come true this year.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes to a theme that we've been talking about since we got started with the podcast is sort of shallow and deep uses of AI. And there's sort of shallow uses that are like, how do I do this math problem? Take a picture, put this into a table for me, all those things. And they're useful and helpful. But, when it comes to it, one of the things we think a lot about is how does AI enhance what it means to be human rather than strip away the humanness of our work or our lives. And so one of the things if you've been around at all in any sort of corporate or nonprofit work situation, you've taken lots of personality tests, personality inventories, work style surveys, all these kind of things. And they're useful for about a week and then you forget about them, right? And they go into a shelf or onto like your bookcase with all the other things that you read and were influenced by and have now forgotten about 2 years later. So one of the things I did this past year was create what I call a coach bot, personalized GPT or customized GPT, which we could tell you how to do in our free course on creating a custom GPT.
Link in the description.
Shameless plug. Yeah. One of the things I did was create a coach GPT that I uploaded all of those personality inventories, work style preferences, Enneagram, all that stuff into this coach bot. And I interact with that coach bot quite a bit when I'm facing sort of a challenge. And I'll say things like, hey, this situation came up, or I don't quite understand what this person is asking me. Here's the email. Knowing what you know about me, my strengths and weaknesses, or my tendencies, how would you coach me to resolve this or to respond appropriately? And it's not just writing sort of copy, that's grammatically correct. It's actually taking who I am and the meanness of me and helping me understand some patterns and ways to respond more appropriately. And so this year, when I was thinking about like New Year's resolutions and sort of how they always start off great and then end 6 days later, I started just asking my coach bot, like, hey, we've been interacting together for a year. What are some common problems that you're seeing that I'm having with work colleagues or personal stuff? And what are some ideas that you have for maybe me improving in the next year? And so it started giving me some really detailed and highly actionable items.
Wow.
And so I was like just interacting with it saying, okay, what would how would you summarize this to keep this memorable to me? And it came up with a couple of ideas. It started off with attunement, which I just didn't jive with. And so I kind of refashioned it into connectedness and started thinking about like, what would this year look like for me to be more connected with my family, with some of my key relationships personally? What would it look like to be more connected with my work colleagues so that I understand them better and it's not sort of a challenging work relationship, but more like a collaborative working relationship. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
So you arrived at your theme for the year from interacting with your personal coaching GPT,
Mm-hmm.
where you started off asking it, how can I sort of, I don't know, be more effective this year, and then once it sort of gave you some ideas, you categorized them into this overall theme of connectedness.
Yep.
That's really
Yeah, I mean it's again this theme we've talked a lot about iteration, that the power of the AI experience is the ability to quickly iterate. And so have an idea, throw out some ideas back to it, and you sort of are off and running on this little treadmill of like, what if, what if, what if, what if? And you begin to sort of run down a trail pretty quickly and see if it's fruitful to follow or not. And so,
like you said, the when you take these personality courses, you forget, and you put them up on the shelf or whatever, or you find some productivity hack and you use it for a little while and you sort of lose it. But that's something that the AI is going to be really good at, which is remembering those things and then connecting them together.
In its instructions, it'll say things like, because you're highly open to new ideas, this will be easy for you, or this will be challenging for you. So this is something you're going to have to be aware of. This is something that's just going to naturally flow. And it's really accurate. Yeah, I mean, what's so funny is that because it's inhuman, it actually tells me the things that I want to know, because it's not processing through a human. How do I feel? What do I think? It's just giving me sort of the data back in a very real-time fashion. I don't know if you've ever been to therapy or counselor, but it's like, can't you just tell me? And they're always like, no, we have to just talk through this. And
just give me the answer. Yeah. Right.
But AI is like, a very quick, it does that thing you want it to do. Just tell me what am I seeing here? And it'll tell you what you're not seeing.
So that's I love that as an example of how our listeners can use AI for their New Year's resolutions. Because I know sometimes people are like, well, I don't even really know what I want to do this year, or like how to set goals. And so that's a great example, especially if you've already been interacting with a custom GPT for, maybe some of these purposes. If you can go back to that GPT and say, knowing what you know, come up with some ideas for how I can improve or things I can focus on for the year. That's really
I mean, AI's superpower is that it's a pattern recognition system. So it's watching you. I mean, that can be scary to people, but it's sort of an independent entity that's observing you and your work and what you do and how you do it. And so it kind of behooves you to just ask it for its input on these questions you have about yourself. Like,
totally.
How can I improve?
I'm just thinking of some other ways too. Like, it was funny because I was transferring I do the bullet journal thing pretty well, but like, there's always room to improve. But I was kind of going back to my last year's bullet journal and being like, oh yeah, totally skipped that and missed that goal and that kind of thing.
Well, here's what's even crazier. So I have the Chat GPT app on my phone. Yeah. So I can actually just, like when I'm journaling or when I'm doing something in my bullet journal, my own handwriting, I just take a picture of it and say, what's your reaction to this? Or do
Yeah.
you have thoughts about this journal entry or
Yeah.
whatever? And it reads my own handwriting and gives me back its own response. So it's, again, it's like another way for me to, and then like if it's something I need to remember, I can say, put that in your memory or create a document so I can
Yep.
upload it into your memory, into your knowledge, so that you keep remembering to tell me this.
Yep. Yep. Yep, exactly. And then you can go back to last year's, entries in
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of the year, talking about, the goals that you were setting and say, okay, I reached this one, but not this one and this one.
Right.
So like, are there things that I can watch out for in terms of habits or tendencies that you've realized that maybe kept me from reaching these other goals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it. I find one of the help. I like to write things down by hand, like in a journal.
Yeah.
I don't like to be on the computer a lot, and so this technology actually helps me leapfrog into high tech by being low tech.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
So it
Yeah.
keeps what I feel like is a very human thing to write things out by hand. But when I discovered, oh, it can read my handwriting, and so I can
That's
ask
such a
its
good
opinion.
That's such a great point, Ed, that I hadn't thought about, because actually, like, I think one of the hindrances that people have when they either prefer to journal, or something that keeps them from hand journaling, is like, well, I don't want to write it in my physical journal and then transfer everything to my project management software. Like, ugh,
Right.
I don't want to do that. But if you can take notes and then take a photo and have it transfer it automatically, that's pretty wild.
Well, I mean, it does. I mean, like, I'll just show people. I was doing just crunching some numbers for
Nice.
quarterly, and I just did this by hand because I had to keep going back and forth to GA4 on Google to get certain data.
Yeah.
But then I just created a handwritten chart and then took a picture of it and had GPT
Yep.
turn it into a table for me that then I downloaded into an Excel form, and we're off and running.
Totally. Yeah, that's a great use case for sure. I have yet to test whether it can read my journaling handwriting. I will have to see. I will be surprised if it can, because I can't even read my old journal
I
entries.
bet it can, because I write cursive, and sort of
Oh wow. Okay, yeah.
my own little cursive, tricks sometimes too, of like, I can't, when I go back to reread it, it's hard for me to see, but it picks it up,
That's awesome.
or at least enough to know the gist of what I'm talking about.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and then you can sort of clean it up if you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I have a friend of mine who's been really into the 12-week year concept, which some of our listeners may be familiar with, um, but I haven't read the book that this theory comes from. But I've just talked to him about it, and so what I did when I was thinking about starting off the new year, I kind of wanted to implement this 12-week year thing. So I just said, okay, I went on to ChatGPT and I said, I have these sort of large goals, but instead of setting New Year's resolutions, which often are doomed to fail often, I said, help me put these large goals into a 12-week year system. And be as specific as possible. And so it sort of gave me like the Cliff's Notes version of what the 12-week year means. And it said, okay, for your health goals, here's how you can break them down into action steps for each week. And then, it's like, you can start with this number of reps for this workout and then increase by this much each week and track it. And so, just sort of like instantly giving yourself this framework to achieve a goal just made it so much more manageable. Like I really honestly got way more excited about the new year and sort of, turning the page of the calendar this year than I have in a while because of that. I think because And like we've said a million times before, like if you have the intention to use these AI tools to make your human life easier and better, you can do that. Like, there's, and I think this is a good example of it, because it's like, I do want to improve. I want to improve, my life
Mm-hmm.
and my habits. And I'm going to use this technology to help me make a system that's just easier to get there,
Right. Right.
and then I don't have to think about it. I can just sort of do these small improvements and try to build in some of these habits. So I thought that was a really, really encouraging use of AI for me, and so I thought it would be cool to share with our listeners as well.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Like, again, it's the iteration idea. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can hear something like you're listening on the radio, you hear a podcast, you can get a little snippet of information and then quickly iterate on that without having to, like,
Yeah.
in the old days, order the book from Amazon,
Yeah.
get it, read through it, figure out how to implement it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, by the time you've done all that, you kind of lost the excitement, the spark that got you going. Whereas, again, this iteration idea is so powerful, and AI really helps it. Is you can take these ideas, get animated by it, and quickly move it towards execution.
Yep.
And then you start seeing results, which then supercharges the drive to stay with it.
Totally.
Which is, again, what we're trying to advocate about the AI tools is not like they're the be all end all. They're not like the panacea for all your problems, but they do, because of this pattern recognition, quick iteration, and accessibility, enable you to have access to resources that previously were the domain of sort of privatized specialists.
Yep.
And now you can, in 5 minutes, say, well, what is this 12-week system? And how do I use it?
Totally. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It lets you very quickly iterate an idea and turn it into something actionable and then measurable. And
Yeah.
then that's how you produce habits, So that definitely got me excited.
Yeah. And then the observable too, like, again, like I said, my AI is watching me, and so it's able to tell me in a very uh, in a very neutral way whether I'm doing it or not. Like, yeah, you didn't do that. It's not trying to please me in any way.
That reminds me, I saw the funniest cartoon once that was like, it was like, are you paranoid and always worried that somebody's following you and da 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 da, like, and it was like an advertisement. It was like, for just $25 a day, hire a stranger to follow you around and look at you from behind the corners, and then you won't feel like you're going crazy anymore. It's so funny. But yeah, I love that. I mean, are there any other examples for maybe setting goals for the year, or just sort of getting organized, or other things that you've thought of that our listeners can try using AI to help with?
Yeah, I think what is helpful is, like, instead of previously, I've gone through phases like, I'm going to, do XYZ system, or I'm going to do MOP system or whatever. And it felt like a total switch. I think what we're both saying in kind of a way is, like, take what you're already doing that's working for you and supercharge it.
Right.
So, like, if you're a Google Sheets person, great.
Yeah.
Just do your Google Sheets, but add AI to it and ask, what are you seeing that I procrastinated on? Or look at this sheet, or look at this program that I'm using. What could I do to improve my time? You can even take a screenshot of your calendar and say, how would you suggest I improve having more time to focus on my goals this year.
Totally.
And it'll tell you how to time box or whatever it is. And
yeah, and like in your prompt, you can say, feel free to provide some examples of productivity techniques that I'm not even aware of, because
right.
maybe people don't, if people aren't in that swimming in that water where they're constantly testing and trying new productivity techniques, then they may not even know. Yeah.
Or start with your problem. Like, hey, I feel like on Monday I get my week going and I'm so excited. And then by Thursday, I just feel like I can't wait till Friday. What do you think is going on? Or ask me some questions about my week that will lead me to having better insight how to plan my weeks more productively. I mean, I think I've said this before, but you don't have to become a expert prompt engineer to get out of Chat GPT or these other AI tools what you need. What you need to do is just be actually more human and just say, I don't understand that, or can you explain that to me? Or, I don't understand what you're talking about. What do I need to learn in order to understand how to do this better? And again, because it's not human, it's not off put by that. It's not like worried that you're having a mental breakdown or anything. It's just going to give you the answer.
But it's such a great point because it actually does require some humility, and it's sort of like, we at least you get to be my age, and you sort of start to build up some walls around, like, you don't want to feel like a dummy, when you're having a conversation with somebody where you're like, I don't know what the word you just used means, but but you have to relearn how to do that actually with AI because like you're not gonna embarrass yourself with them. And you're not going to hurt their feelings if you say, no, I don't care about that. Just change the subject, like I do that all the time. I'm like, no, wrong path, start over, and you're not going to hurt its feelings when you do that. But so that's sort of interesting. Yeah. Like you sort of have to, it's a different social vernacular that you have to use.
Yeah, you can be very directive. In a way that you can't be with people. And so that's its strength. And you can say things like, no, that's not it. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about this. That you couldn't have a normal conversation with another human being and do that without them getting frustrated or annoyed.
It almost makes me think of, it's been a little while since I've read this, but it makes me think of Dostoevsky's The Idiot, where basically the conceit of that novel is like a man who is, inherits all that, but he has none of the social awareness that everybody in these highbrow social circles has. And because of that, he's like a very refreshing and interesting person, but gets into trouble because of that as well. So it's almost like the AI kind of can be in that function for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I just realized the movie Being There is just a retelling of Dostoevsky.
I've never seen that movie.
It's great.
Okay.
It's about a guy who's basically an idiot, and he stumbles his way into wealth and power and privilege by being totally unassuming, and people imprint their desires on him when he's just asking the question.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, I'll have to watch that.
Anyway,
yeah, that's good.
So I wonder how much of AI is sort of like an ink blot test, where we're like we're bringing our own stuff to it instead of just understanding for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you can make that case. Like, think about the fears that you have about AI, and that maybe will reveal some things about yourself. Or think about the things that you like want. That you maybe lean on it too much about, and that might reveal some things too. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, but I think, for our listeners going into the new year, like, I think we're just encouraging you, get a little creative, set aside 30 minutes to have some back and forth with your preferred AI tool, and just start to think about, like, how can I use the advantages of this technology to set myself up for a little bit more success in my goal setting, my habit forming, making things just a little bit easier to measure and track and improve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you could even have a weekly check-in with your bot and just say, here's what went well, here's what didn't go well. And then
ask me questions to see, to test how, my week went about this. Yeah.
And put it in your calendar, like chat, meeting with Chatty, and you can just have that check-in. And again, it's observing, it's making some connections of patterns that we tend not to see. And after a couple of weeks, it'll start giving you some answers like, hey, you tend to blow off the afternoons because you had too big of a lunch or whatever.
Totally.
So yeah, it's a new year, 2025. And in a lot of ways, it's going to be a year where everyone is talking about how to integrate AI.
Yeah.
And we just want to be helpful guides to that and help you not feel overwhelmed, but find practical, actionable ways to make AI part of your workflow and your life and productive.